One of the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Correct.
There we go. Meeting of the sewer task force now begins. We will allow a 5-minute period for people to come up and speak. It must be germane to the sewer task force. We waive the necessity to sign in. Have you got anything, Mr. Kennedy?
No, sir, no. Nothing to do.
Eric, next one's yours.
Give me around people's names in there present. Y'all got an email last Wednesday, pretty much just giving y'all the update of what council received as bids. And then y'all got a copy of the RFQ, the bids of both things, and then a breakdown of it. I asked y'all to review them, look at them, and then council wanted y'all to come back and give y'all's review, give your recommendation on them. So hopefully, I asked if y'all had any questions or anything like that, please let me know. I didn't get any questions back or anything like that. So all council really needs from y'all is y'all's recommendation on who to award the bid to and proceed forward with that.
Based upon Scott's letter, Lone Star is with the bids, 3 out of the 4 bids that we requested. And he's only $5.25 on bid number 3, but all the others is between $20 to $10 cheaper. Some as cheap as $75. And based upon the requirement of the bid, to me, John did not submit the bid properly. The company made just made totals where Lone Star did assessment on each item as required under the bid. So based upon just that information, Lone Star, in my opinion, should get the bid because they qualified, they made the proper bid request according to our bid request. They made proper entry to each of the bids that we submitted. And so that's just my interpretation of the information that was presented to the city council and to us.
That definitely seems more professional. I mean, I'll motion to go Lone Star.
I have one question for him that really doesn't pertain to this. How long is you're planning on it to take you to do this?
Early discussions was we was gonna go fiscal year, October 1. Because 2 things were, you are awarding the bid on October 1st. We're going into winter months. So we're gonna have some limitations there. Not 100% sure supply would hold up for a whole, if we did for 6 months. So, 1 year I think would be fine.
And the reason why I asked it was, could we get, I'm looking for the ROI next spring when it's the rainy season. That we can take this year's numbers and compare them to next year's numbers. Do you
To see
think?
what we're solving.
Right. Do you think that you could?
Yeah, we're headed in the right direction, Our limitations are gonna be just weather and supply. Right now, we don't really have a supply, but it's probably coming. Everything else is happening that way. So to be limited to 6 months or
Right.
3 months, 4 months, that would be an issue.
I just wanted.
We'll have a percentage gain, every couple of months.
I just wanted a commitment that this is gonna be a
Yeah,
high priority and.
yeah, no, we're gonna move forward, get that test and do this.
maybe also start in like older areas that are not along shoreline, like that are capped already, you know? I don't know, just thought.
Well, I sent
It
pictures there, I showed pictures of Eric, we did one on Friday, and y'all was talking about the green tank issues, and this one was all caved in on the side, 3/4 full of sludge, pumps burn up, has been for a while.
He was on the
It
shoreline.
is on shoreline.
He was on water edge.
So I think, if the council goes with this bid, then we need to probably communicate, say, hey, we're gonna do these 10 houses this week. And that way we have communication, when we got dogs put up, if people wanna be there and watch us, they can be. Some of this checklist stuff, but they need to be there. Or at least have communication when we know how many bedrooms they've got, how many people's living in the house, as part of y'all's checklist, if y'all okay.
Do you check the light and everything too?
Yeah, they've got full functionality.
Okay.
My wife had a question and I've got to live with her, so.
Okay.
She was just wondering if y'all have to dig up and mess up the yard, do y'all fix it back or?
I mean, we're there to put risers on, we're gonna fix it back best we can.
And I can honestly tell her I asked.
You asked that question, and then we will address that.
They're not
And
landscapers.
that will be an issue going into the winter months, as people, grass goes dormant, the next thing you know, we've got a mud spot out there, so that may be something cause that comes to the city.
Good.
But we are in repair, and it has to be homeowner, it has to be hey, we are in repair stage here, and we're not gonna be landscapers for it.
Right.
I haven't had any, we've done a few, or I say people that had risers put on. I've never had anybody call and complain down there. There's been times the dirt is settled, we've always gone back and filled in more dirt. I've never had one complaint about, oh, you dirtied up my yard, it looks bad, or anything like that. And people sort of expect,
Sure.
a septic tank and stuff when they go in, it's expected. So Keith made a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion of recommendation.
Recommending that Lone Star be brought forward to the city council as the vendor of choice.
That's what I got. Any other discussion on that?
All those, say aye.
Right.
Unanimous. Now we go into the second item. And that is a discussion on green tank pumps. There has been quite a bit of stuff going on in the background. It's pretty well, it's gonna be up to you guys, but my recommendation to you guys is gonna be that we, from now on, go back with a grinder pump instead of an effluent pump. Eric finally heard back from the engineer, and we're looking at taking from the lift station and drawing radiuses to it so that we can size the pumps according to where the load is. Because if you put just to use for example, you put a horse and a half 2 blocks from the lift station, and you put a horse and a half in Lakeside City East, Lakeside City East will never get pumped. So we have to size the pumps according to what the load is. And Keith, you know a whole lot more about that.
I agree with Gregory, because those other pumps, any trash gets in the lift station, it's.
You're talking grinder with all replacement on all the green tanks?
Yeah, as the pumps go up.
And the
Not
grinder,
for you,
y'all
not-
got proposed at 110?
There's a.
Yeah, so Dean's been looking at it pretty thoroughly. Obviously, you can only get so much head pressure and flow out of a 110. I mean, if you add 230, that would make a world of difference. But being able to get 230 volts, most of these are just single phase 110, so that's a whole other cost of that to come in. And this is something this is something that the city's gonna absorb out of theirs. It's just gonna be, instead of using the current pumps that we're using, we're gonna switch to a different pump and start using these. So it would be at no cost to the citizens, anything like that.
I mean, I just know in the history, we're going to 220 grinder pumps. A lot of these other houses may not have the breakers for it.
Yeah, that's right. So we're trying to just deal with the infrastructure, electrical infrastructure that the people have, and go from there. Most time what happens is stuff flows over to the green tank. The type of pumps that is in everybody's backyard right now are called submersible effluent, and they're just made nothing more than to pump effluent. So they don't really, a Kleenex, a tissue, whatever you want to call it, gets in there, it gets sucked up by the pump, it gets up there, and it doesn't get grinded up and go, it stays at the filter, and that pump will just dead and burn up and go from there. Where the grinding pump, it would grind it all up into small particles and send it on down the line. So he's doing all the math. I was hoping we'd have it all done by tonight. We didn't. We're gonna have we wanna get about 3 to 4 pumps that we can test, put them in all the same strategic locations. I don't wanna put one at Larry's house right down the street in Royal that's real close to the pump station, when I should be putting it out further out somewhere else like that. So we're gonna put these all in the same location more or less, so we can collect the same data from it. Questions on that?
Does a grinder pump give less head pressure? Does it? Which,
Yes.
is it so open more?
Well, we got
As
to be
long as the
careful.
alarm are bigger,
Yeah.
you're not creating that pressure.
Yeah, it's, okay,
You're wanting that grinding effect.
yeah.
We gotta be real careful with the amount of pressure pumps we put in there, because obviously we're a pressure system, we have Schedule 40 PVC. If we put too big a pump in there, 230 and these huge things, we're gonna be blowing out lines everywhere. So it's trying to find that equal balance, stuff like that, where to do it, everything else.
Schedule 40 is 100 pound, isn't it?
No,
It's
it's
200.
200.
Schedule 80, you get 4 or 5.
so,
Because right now we're running, according to what we've been told, 65 pounds. Is our maximum pressure.
Price difference per pump is,
25% more.
oh, that's all.
But we haven't negotiated, we haven't talked, we just,
Yeah, and that's one of the main things we would like to do is find a good solid pump that we can stick with. Yeah.
one of the pump companies I've talked to is Barrister, Permisa. And they've offered to send us some test pumps.
Sounds good. Other than that, that's all I got.
What's the price difference in the pumps you've been using and the pumps that you're proposing? Or have you gone that far yet?
We've gotten quotes on what they are, just not mass quotes, to where, hey, if I buy 20 of these pumps, what are you gonna sell them to me for? I've got individual prices. Like I said, they're about, anywhere from 15 to 25% more. But then, it's sort of like a Datsun compared to a Chevy, or Chevy compared to a Cadillac. There's some up there that are Myers pumps that are known for the big stuff, and they make the smaller stuff, and so their stuff is a little bit more expensive.
Is there a huge weight difference in them?
Yes, yeah, the grinder pumps are significantly heavier, but then they got the feet on them and everything else that sit down at the bottom of them, other than it's the top holding them up and the rope got to it.
And they lift on with the tripod.
Yes. I can't tell you how many pumps we burned up just because, or I say we that have gotten burned up. Sam and Kevin will get there, and whatever's flowed over from the septic tank in there, and there's just clogged up the bottom of it, and just sit there pumping, or grinding pump, necessarily grind it all up.
Are there any city booster pumps, or is it all just
Beside the
pressure?
two lift stations, there's the two lift stations, and then, this one is the small grinder station over there with the Eagle Scope Edition, when they did that.
It seems like when one person uses their water constantly at an odd time, like, they get home at 3 o'clock in the morning from work,
Yeah.
like their pump would be working harder because it's having to push a lot of head pressure, right?
It's weird, we looked at the graph on the usage and everything. Early in the mornings, there's a peak when everybody's taking showers. About 8 o'clock it drops, from 8 o'clock to about 3 o'clock it's there. But then when people start showing up, 7 o'clock is usually their peak time. People do their laundry, eat, dishwashing and all that, and then it starts going back down. And so, that's, yeah. And sometimes you get lucky. I mean, if you come home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, do laundry and everything else, you don't have, necessarily have to compete with anything heavy. We had a big, and that's only for, I mean, that's the normal thing. But it's funny, you got this curve right here on a normal day, and then on the day right after a heavy rain, I mean, you're starting way up here, going way up here and everything else. And it's like, our pumps are coming up and they're not even meeting where they
I'm saying like in an area where like peak time, 60 pumps are running all simultaneously through a tough neighborhood, that's easier on the pump because it's all the pumps are working together. Then there's times when one pump with like 10 pumps are running, those 10 have to work that much harder.
Yeah, it depends where you are. So like,
But
somebody close to the lift station, it's pumping and it pretty much flows on down. Somebody way on water's edge, they're having to pump up and they pump all the way this way. So it's a hard balance kind of figure out.
The other thing, one of the reasons why there's a little bit of price, a bump in price, is we're going from intermittent duty to constant duty. Because the pumps that we have right now are designed to run just a few minutes and then sit. Well, in our system, we may run for 3 hours or 4 hours, and the pumps, because they're in intermittent duty, won't hold up to it. So, the pumps that we're looking at now are constant duty, which means they can run 24 hours a day and not burn up. And of course, you pay a little bit more for that, but it's like a Fram oil filter, pay me now or pay me later.
Anything else? They look tired.
Cloudy days.
It is. I kept thinking it was gonna rain all day.
Hopefully next meeting we'll have pricing. I think we're looking at probably 3 different horsepower pumps, depending upon how much head you have to pump against. And,
Council will meet Monday night to award the bid. So if y'all are welcome to come Monday night at 6 o'clock. And, that way we can get moving and get it going with the bid by October 1st, which is what we wanted to do. Go from there. That's all I have.
Larry, you got anything?
You wanted to discuss how the city and the citizens are gonna work together in the pumping of the septic tanks?
And the payment of the
Yeah,
No.
I was thinking is since each septic tank has its own particular situation depending on how many members are in the family, and they are accountable for the pumping out the septic tank. And the city would pay for the risers and the green tank. But they would share the cost. Because certain houses would be, like my house, I only have 2 people in it. And it's been pumped out July 3rd. So there wouldn't be much doing it. But somebody down here who's never pumped out since 2009, he's gonna have a lot more problems. And because of that, I think it should be just fair that each resident should pay for the pump out, but the city would pay for the risers and that cost. This way they would share the cost instead of the city paying for everything. And the city didn't create the septic tank problem, the cleanout. Each residence, and you should be paying, each resident should be on a normal cycle 3 to 5 years, but a lot of people have never been on a septic tank. They don't even know what it's about. So, and if you have a family of 5 or 6, you're gonna have major problems. And not even counting if the tanks are bad or any of that. So I was just thinking,
Now, your tank is gonna cost just as much as my tank is gonna cost to get pumped out.
I know, but I'm talking about like a tank that's been put in that it's not concrete. And it's imploded. Okay? Is the city gonna pay for that?
That's,
If the tank has to be replaced
Yeah,
completely,
no.
no, I think it should be
Yeah, these are pump out inspections, so where you're coming back and then we're gonna get a list saying, here's where this one is bad right here, this has a big crack, this is where all the water's
Right.
coming from.
But I
And
think,
I'm gonna come to you and say, hey, you got a big crack, here's documentation, you need to get it fixed.
because, and that's part of owning a house and a
Yeah,
septic system.
Yeah, that's how it's all, that's, I
And I
assume.
think the person who owns that house should pay for the cost of pumping it out, not the city.
No, that's not how we,
You guys are getting caught. He's talking, you have to separate the septic tank from the green tank. The green tank's the city's responsibility,
right?
okay?
So
The
if you,
septic tank, the septic tank is $350 to be pumped. That's a homeowner's responsibility. But if they've got a cracked green tank, that's a city responsibility. But the homeowner is responsible for the septic tank.
that's not how we wrote the bid and the quote. Y'all wanted a price for pumping, doing everything.
Right,
That's up
they
to
get
you.
the special price because of the contract.
But it's not itemized out, is what I'm saying.
But the city, but nowhere in the contract does it say the city, you have a bid price, but there's nowhere in this where it says the city pays for everything. All you have is prices.
I thought that we decided that the customer pays for it, but over a long period of time.
Yes,
Inside the water.
Into the fund, right, attached to the water bill. But that figure,
Now, I'm not going through and I'm not gonna do it, well,
Or they
I'm
can
only
pay
charging
upfront.
you $7 a month, I'm charging you $8.50, and I'm charging,
everybody's the same amount, even though,
so I don't see.
well, my theory is each system, the septic system, not the green tank, but the septic system should be paid for by the owner. The tank, the pumping of the tank, that should come out of the owner's pocket. The city will pay for the risers and the green tank.
This is all new. This is all new.
You don't think
That's
so?
not how we wrote the.
I know you wrote the bid for the price, but you didn't write the bid for who paid for it. There's nowhere in that contract that says who paid for it. Right?
No, they're gonna come to the city with their hand out. Because you're right, it doesn't say that, but they're gonna come to the city because the city asked for a quote.
So you
Yeah,
have,
it's right here. You can break the numbers off of the quote. It's so much to pump the tanks and it's so much,
right,
right.
but that's what but my contention is that the homeowner should pay for the pumping of the tank.
How am I gonna break that down?
Easily.
There's 500 gallon plus green track, 33, 40, 20,
Right.
1,000 gallons, 422, 70. That's not for public.
That's not,
It's not here. That's for the committee only. You need to bring those two back.
Okay.
No, you need to bring those back.
No.
It will give me.
The reason why they
some
have
public
not
ones.
been approved by the city council, that's why. We can't submit information that has
If
not
you look
been
at
approved.
bid number one, it's inspect, photos taken, risers, something, that's one total package for everything done. That's not, hey, there's no breakdown on it. That's, the only breakdown is whether you got a 500 gallon or a 1,000 gallon.
The homeowner's still gonna pay for it, they're just gonna break it out and pay for it. So it is what you're saying,
Everybody's saying the same thing.
but they're gonna come to the city looking for X amount of dollars. So in a sense, maybe up front, the city is gonna have to cover that because you're only gonna get it in pieces.
Right. That's what we were thinking.
And that's what we allocated money for that.
But I'm gonna share something with you. I mean, I've been listening twice now anyhow. I had a good conversation with Scott, the other day, but, some of this where it's going, sets a little crossways with me, just a little bit. Because we keep talking about all these things, how people, got to do them every 5. There's gonna be a schedule come out of this. I can smell it coming, okay? And I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna tell some folks that, you can do that where the sun don't shine. And here's why. Because a lot of this, not all of this stuff, I don't want to deal in absolutes, but a lot of what you're saying doesn't hold true always. Like I said, the last time I had mine pumped was 25 years ago. Now, there were four of us in there for about 4 or 5 years. After that, it's 2 people. So if somebody comes and tells me I got to pump it over 10 years, I know what my answer is going to be. Because it doesn't necessarily need it, but I'm seeing myself getting forced into a box,
No,
Now,
unless I'm missing
I'm
something.
gonna answer that. Tell him about the person that you pumped up Friday.
Yeah, the green tank was 3/4 full of solid sludge,
This is different.
solid sludge.
Well,
For Steve,
yeah, I don't think they all are, but I talked to some folks who have knowledge, years of knowledge, that say that sludge in the bottom has always been there. Now, we used to use a different pump. I've been trying to remember all this time. I've dug back in my crap. It was a Gould pump, was what we used to use. That's what I have in mind, and it's still there. 25 years it's been in there. I firmly believe my pump has not been changed. Because my wife's always there, I'm there. I know Sam or Kevin would knock on my door saying, hey, we're gonna go back there and change your pump. I don't know why they would, because I don't have any red light. I haven't called them ever on a red light issue after I had mine pumped 25 years ago. And I apologize to Bobby because it had to be pumped, or he had to come out twice and pull some things out of my pump. Because my pump did not have a screen. I think a lot of them don't have screens out here. So you're gonna get some stuff in there. If you do have a screen, or even if you don't, you get a bunch of crap there. Yeah, it's gonna make that pump work a lot harder. My pump's been there. I take care of my system, so,
and it's the first part of the
but
I'm sorry, I apologize for coming in.
Yeah, we're trying to hold this to the committee.
what you gotta understand too, there is people like yours that are exception to the rule, but I can't, for us to go through and say, oh, okay, well, yours has been working for 25 years, no problems,
I'm
everything
saying
else.
that, I'm just saying.
How do you know that?
I didn't say the rest of it. There's always been sludge in the bottom. And those pumps have been having to work in that environment for a long time. Now, if we've gone to a different kind of pump and it won't handle that regardless, okay, maybe, and you guys are doing the right thing, you're looking towards a different pump, a little better quality, and that's all well and good. But I'm gonna go right back to what I've said 4 times now, and I'm gonna continue to say it. If I ionize the problem, whatever money and you guys aren't gonna be making a decision, I got that. But whatever money we spend as a city needs to be focused on the problem. The inspection is great. I don't think it's gonna get you some brownie points with TSEC, but I'll tell you what will get you brownie points, get rid of that iodine. And if you cap the lateral lines of those that are left uncapped, you're gonna cut out, I'm gonna be really conservative, say at least 50% of what you got right now. And those units can handle that. If you cut that way on down, I think it'll be higher than that.
By just capping the ladder lines. So what do you do about everybody out there that, say for instance, you got a big crack inside of your tank and you don't even know it, but your water's coming in there, filling in every time it rains because you got a crack, you got a lid on your septic tank so it's not even sealed, all that water.
I'm not saying inspection is a bad
All that
idea.
Water
At
coming
some
in,
point,
it's
it's
going to
good.
their pump and then it's pumping it all out. And the city's having to pay for all the extra water that's coming into your system being infiltrated, not just by the lateral lines, by a cracked tank, a cracked lid, all that, and so we're having to pump all that out.
Okay. The fluid dynamics of a tank that's already got liquid and solids in it, if it's up there, mine's probably, I'll bet you it's halfway up with some solid, I'm guessing, I have no idea. But if you got liquids and you got solids in there, it's gonna be hard for something to come out here unless it has more pressure out here, it's not going in that tank. Through the lid, yes, because it's up here. Depends on where your yard is and all those things, so the inspection is a good idea, and it's gonna be hard to do that. You can't inspect what you can't see. It's what I used to tell people on airplanes. It's the same thing. You gotta get all the crap out of the way, no pun intended, so they can see if it's cracked. I got that. But for the here and the now, if we're gonna spend money, it needs to be focused on the iodine and that, I mean, it needs to be. It just does. I don't think it'll cost $175 or some of them quotes are pretty high, yeah. And I don't know which option the city's gonna go with. I can't say yes, council, you know, but
Didn't you make a good point? Didn't you suggest when we were doing this that we do a sludge test on each of the tanks? Just to see- Yeah, after, make
The
sure,
initial round.
yeah,
clean them out
just
first.
make
Yeah.
sure, make sure that
The initial round, the cleaning and inspecting and everything was the initial round. After that,
we do
we'll
a
do a
sludge
periodic
test.
sludge
18
test
months or whatever.
to monitor it.
So after 3 years, you have a tank like yours that's not being used, you don't need to clean it out. And there's a figure that you use to clean it out. So after
30%, wasn't it?
So after 3 years, you're only running 10, you don't need to clean. After 5 years, you're only running
oh, well, again,
12.
the larger issue is the problem of iodine.
So how do you know your septic tank, just, you're saying that you know your septic tank is working 100% like it should, just because you haven't had to have it pumped out?
No, I'm saying that if you have a whole bunch of lateral lines in your backyard to allow water to come in there because the check valves have failed, that's gonna go straight into your green tank, it's gonna be pumping out a whole bunch of smelly rainwater. I got that. If you cap those off, you have less points of intrusion, especially from gravity, because it's gonna get in those lateral lines. You know, if it can get out, it can get in. So you're gonna have more coming in that way than you are from an access point on a septic tank. If it's cracked, yeah, it could come in at the higher points because of gravity and such, but from a certain point down, it's gotta have more pressure, it's not coming in.
Right. Well, I agree with you on the lateral lines, but now all the pumps that we're going through, all the Sam and Kevin having to go out there continuously to change pumps and stuff like that, most of what they're seeing from it is because you get there and there's grease buildup on it, the float switches. I know, Mike, they came out to yours not too long ago and your float switch was hung up with grease so much that it wasn't kicking off. Sat there and ran.
It might make it heavy.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
how do we know that, that was sort of the whole thing. We were gonna try to address the system, the issue as a whole, rather than, hey, let's just do this one thing and then not take, and then still have the other stuff that we have to deal with, the people, because that's, I mean, when you're spending that $742 a pump and we're having to replace them left and right because people's stuff is flowing over from their septic tank because they're not getting a pump, flowing over into the green tank, and it's burning up our pumps and causing all the other issues and everything
Well,
else.
the pumps may be burning up because it's a different brand of pump, Eric. And if they're failing because they're not as good, they're not meant to be continuous cycle, I got that. I got a pump that's been there 25 years, guys, you know?
Yeah, but you're right next to the lift station.
Huh?
Yeah.
Mine doesn't go in there.
You're one of the, I mean, most of the people,
Yeah.
Royal, Galleon and all that.
Yeah.
It's usually the ones on the east and the ones further back on shoreline and stuff like that. But I see a lot of problems.
And the only reason I say that is because the stats of 22, 25%, whatever they may be every year, that would mean every 4 years, every pump in Lakeside City's got to be changed. I know that's not true.
Correct.
There's gonna be some problem areas, and it's probably some of the same places where the same pumps get put in, and they're still failing. So that's not indicative of anything other than the pumps are failing, is what that tells me. And again, I mean, we got a problem maybe with septic tanks, we don't know, and you can't know until you get them cleaned out and look.
That's what we're
But
trying to
the
do.
bids that I heard, the dollar amounts, even on the bids that I don't, or the options that I don't think council's gonna go for, are still pricey. And it's gonna add up to a lot of money. And if you're looking to solve the problem and make some brownie points with DSEC, then if you get rid of that I&I, that's gonna go a boatload of ways. You know, the other stuff, I don't know. I mean, we got money to spend on the septic system, or the sewage system, I know that. Still don't have a readout on 3 as far as compromise yet. So that's an unknown, it's, you know, very pricey. I'd be looking more towards that, throwing some money at it than I would be the rest of this, to be honest with you. But like I said, this is your meeting, guys, you know?
I like that idea, though.
Yeah, that's it, I'm sorry, I
It's a
came
good
in,
idea.
I came in late, I'm sorry.
Considering
Thank
some of that's gonna be certificate of obligation, the taxpayers have already paid for some of that. That's,
Okay, thank you. The issue of the not last city council, but the city council before that, I was at the meeting. The gentleman stood up and said that we put in the risers and of his green tank and the 2 vents. He said, since that has been done, his red light has not come on one time.
Who's that?
I can't remember the gentleman's name. He said it did not come on one time.
Yeah.
So that tells
Gary.
or tells
Yeah,
me,
Jerry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Gary Bradshaw.
Yeah.
that tells me that our thinking is correct, that the I&I problem for that to hold, even with the pumps that we have right now. So just imagine how many other residents we could solve the problem just by doing that.
Yeah, I know for a fact from Jerry, we didn't cut the ladder lines.
No, but you can go into the backyard, you don't have to spend any money, you send Sam around to look and see if mine is this far above the dirt. This guy's probably was not, so yeah, and if it's sitting in a puddle, it's gonna run in there, and it's gonna get a lot of water.
Mine was 2 inches below the top of the dirt where they put the riser on it.
Yeah.
And I've had one problem when we had the 3 grind.
Weeks ago.
Yeah, that's the only problem I've had since they put the riser on.
So our thinking is correct, but I think by cleaning the tanks, putting the risers in, thinking about the pumps that we suggested earlier, putting in the grinders in the pump, that will all add to the I&I problem. And once we have that database from last year's to the new year, we can compare the 2 and we can show TEQ,
We used to call them train wreck.
that, hey, this is what we've done, this is what the data shows before, this is what the data shows after. And I think that will be a great solution to our problem, not correct the problem eventually, but a good stepping point to that problem. So, that's all I got to say.
well, that would mean you'd have to go do another bid, rebid everything.
No. Because I think the bids were pretty comprehensive, from what I heard of the options there. I don't know if all of them said capped on that, or I can't remember. So,
But that's a committee
Yeah.
deal. Anything else?
Motion? If we're gonna sit here quietly, I think we make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, right.
I'll second that one too.